Okay, good evening, everybody. It is 6:02 p.m. on Monday, December 8th, 2025. I'm calling to order tonight's meeting of the trustees of the Housing Trust. Our first order of business is to approve the minutes of the last meeting of the Housing Trust, which took place on September 8th. Montserrat took the minutes and has circulated them. I have reviewed them. They looked complete and accurate to me. So do I hear any suggested corrections or additions to the minutes of the September 8th meeting of the trust? If not, I'll hear a motion to approve the minutes.
Motion to approve.
Fred Orlowski has made the motion to approve. Montserrat, do you want to second that motion?
Yes, I second.
Sort of a leading question there, all right? All in favor, say aye. Actually, sorry, Zoom, we have to do the official roll call vote. So Fred Orlowski,
Yes.
Montserrat,
Yes.
and Brandt is yes. So that's unanimous. All right. Next item. I put this on before I had a chance to really look into it because the item was discuss the Housing Trust report to the Community Preservation Committee. Because I vaguely had in mind that we had an agreement with the CPC related to the money we got from them that required periodic reporting. I've just looked into that, and so I'll just put on the record that there is a provision in the prevailing trust agreement with the CPC that reads that every 6 months, the trust shall provide the Community Preservation Committee with a written update on the progress towards completion of all projects on which CPA funds have been awarded. And I think my interpretation of this is that while the CPC has transferred funds to the trust, it wasn't an award for a project. We're not pursuing any projects. So I'm going to, for the moment, take the position that we do not owe the CPC any report. Like, I don't know when any report was sent to the CPC from the Housing Trust. So maybe Montserrat, you being our representative to the CPC, can at the next CPC meeting, I don't know, clarify this. You might say we're taking the position that we don't have a reporting obligation until we are pursuing a project with CPA funds that have either been awarded to us, that have been awarded to us in the past.
I'm just catching up writing.
Yeah. And if they, otherwise it would just be a silly pro forma, like we have nothing new to report.
So I'm asking, just to clarify, I'm asking, do we need to submit a report if we haven't spent money on any projects that you gave us money for?
Yeah, I think that's a reasonable.
Okay.
And I just wanted to put this out there tonight so that collectively we remember that if and when the trust starts spending funds that is received from the CPC, that would presumably trigger a biannual reporting responsibility. Does that make sense to you, Fred?
Yes. Yes. Yeah, I don't ever remember us spending CPC money. The only thing, maybe at one time for the Smikes house, but I don't know if that was out of trust or some other method. I don't remember.
So since we have an official liaison with the CPC now, thanks to Montserrat, we can, and maybe, ultimately, even though the agreement is sort of like things in writing, some of this can be informal until we really have substantial stuff to share. Okay.
Okay,
So
I can do that.
That's all I want to do on that. When is the next CPC meeting?
I don't remember, and I don't have I keep a paper date book, which is not right next to me.
Okay. Not
But
important.
it's every month.
Okay, okay. And the last question for the trust is I did look on the town website and noted that the town website for the trust says it's a 5-member trust. Right now, only 4 members are listed. Jerry, as far as I know, is just a member of the committee, though
Correct.
as a, depending on how this goes, we might just, I don't, and Paula's not here yet but I don't believe Paula was made a trustee of the housing trust. So I think technically have an open seat on the housing trust that maybe we can just leave unfilled until we really have business going on. We have a quorum, we have 4 members out of 5 needed. So as long as 3 show up, we can do the de minimis business we need to do. Okay. All right.
So Brant, it's the 3 of us. It's
And Fred
Fred
Barron.
Orlowski, Brant, and Fred Barron.
Yes.
Okay.
And you.
Yes, and me.
Great. Okay. All right. I didn't have any other topics that appeared aside from the 5th member question that were not reasonably anticipated 48 hours in advance of the meeting. So unless anyone else has any housing trust business, somebody could make a motion to adjourn tonight's meeting of the housing
I
trust.
move that we adjourn.
Second,
Motion has been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Fred Orlowski,
yes.
Montserrat,
Yes.
Brandt is yes. All right, we are adjourned. The housing trustees meeting is adjourned at 6:09 p.m. Awesome. And so moving on, we're going to continue this conversation. I'm going to call to order tonight's meeting of the Housing Committee. I'm going to call it to order at 6:09 p.m. Again, Monday, December 8th, 2025. First item of business, approval of minutes. This time, these are minutes of the Housing Committee meeting last on November 10th.
I move that we approve the minutes of November 10th.
Second.
Okay. Then we'll do a roll call vote. Jerry is a voting member.
Yes.
Who made the motion? Jerry made the motion.
Fred, I'm give it to Fred. It's fine.
Oh, Fred made the motion and Jerry seconded. Very good. So Fred,
Yes.
Jerry,
Yes.
Montserrat,
Yes.
and Brandt is yes as well. Okay. Now, the next item of business was to discuss the Housing Committee update to the Community Preservation Committee plan for housing. And where I believe this was left is Montserrat was going to get a copy of well, we learned since our last meeting, right, that the CPC has asked the Housing Committee to write the housing part of the CPC plan. Is that an accurate statement, Montserrat?
Yes, to rewrite, instead of just giving them suggestions, to rewrite it and then submit it to them for their approval.
I see.
And I volunteered to do that rewriting when the American Community Survey comes out.
Okay.
And I will check it with all of you in a meeting, or else if there isn't a meeting at the right time, I can just send it to everyone and ask them to individually give me suggestions.
Yeah, I'd be happy to coordinate with you on that. That's
Great.
supposed to be released on December 11th. So it'll be coming out hopefully next week.
Okay, will you know when that happens, Jerry?
No, I'll make a note on my calendar to check, but I don't
Okay.
have any notification in place.
Okay, if you could just let me know if you find that out, that would be great.
Okay, we'll do so.
Okay.
And related to that, we'll talk about this in a minute, but I spoke with Megan Rhodes up at FERCog.
Yes.
She's part of the Community Preservation Committee. She
Oh,
said she
okay.
was going to reach out to the housing group probably in April to see if there were any updates. And I told her that we're already sort of having this ready to get in motion, but we're waiting for the ACS report to come out in the middle of December. So it'll probably be sooner than that she'd have some feedback. So she was very happy to hear that.
So I'll just make the following comment. I'm always happy to see reports get updated with the latest information. But my impression of the CPC plan and the housing portion thereof was that, the thing that I sort of see as important about it is, from our perspective, is that we want to make sure that the kinds of things we would like to get done related to housing in Whately that could benefit from CPC supported funding from out of the CPA, that the official CPC plan is consistent with what we might anticipate. And it seemed like it was. And it seemed like the details of these other things are nice to haves, but not really must haves. So I found myself feeling like, well, it's nice to have an updated plan, but it's not going to make a difference as far as I can tell. And this is just my personal opinion right now, and I'd welcome pushback or feedback. But it seems to me that if the CPC operates when they review requests and future requests, which might come from us, they probably say, well, how does this request relate to our CPC plan for housing? Do we call it out in the plan or do we not? And so that's, I think, the thing we want to be most concerned about versus up-to-date data. But so I'm sort of saying, I could almost sort of say we have nothing new to add, but your opinions are welcome on the subject.
So can I comment on that?
Yeah,
Um, you're saying that you feel like it does already have the important parts for us. And
I think so. I was looking at the housing portion of the CPC plan through the lens of how would they use that plan when reviewing future requests for funding, from us, we want to do it, and if we wanted funding from the CPC to do something, and somehow the CPC plan for housing said, whatever you do, we will not support X, that would be bad, right? So we just sort of want to anticipate and make sure that their plan, since they're giving us the power, it seems, which is a little weird to me, but they're basically saying, you housing committee people, you write our plan for housing, which will guide and inform how we will make future funding decisions. That's my interpretation
but
of
it
their
sounds
plan.
so it sounds like you're saying that it doesn't need that you don't see a need for changes in order to
The
get what
more
we
I
want.
thought about it, I was asking myself, again, I like Jerry, if a report has old data, my instinct is let's get the latest, let's update the data, let's make it accurate. On the other hand, I also live in a world where I think we're all volunteers, and what time and what's worth worrying about. And this was starting to fall below, do I really need to worry about that? As long as their plan is consistent with what I think we want to do. But Jerry, maybe I think you may have studied the housing portion of the CPC plan a bit more carefully than I did, and could have a legitimately different point of view.
Yeah, so I think the framework as it's laid out is solid, and the verbiage I don't disagree with. But my suggestion would be, since the data points are laid out and only need to be refreshed, which shouldn't take much time, it's, I believe, at some point going to be important when you get ready to pitch a project to the town to have accurate information relative to what's the affordability issue in Whately, and this is why we're trying to put in place affordable housing, what's happening with the census of households, yada, yada, all these data points that say, here's what is happening to your town, or here's where your town is today, not what's even happening. Because you could start doing some historical comparison, but that's
Yep.
even more work. But I think it's important when the time finally comes and somebody goes before a town meeting and works with the select board to say, okay, we've got something, let's spend money. Somebody in that audience is going to raise a question and say, why do we need to worry about affordable housing? Why do we need to worry about seniors? Why do we need to worry about more apartments? Yada, yada, yada. So I think having current data that probably, I haven't seen that report, but it looks like it's pretty easy to pull out the data points. And I can't imagine between Montserrat and me, it's more than an hour's worth of time
Okay.
once a year.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
fair.
think it gives us credibility, and I really don't mind
Right.
doing it.
Well, that's important. I just wanted to float this idea like,
Yeah.
but I think those are good points. And if it's not a heavy lift, which it doesn't sound like, then I'm in. So I'm happy to just move on from this topic unless there's more discussion. Okay. So then, yep, Fred.
I think it may be important to have the plan and to make sure CPC follows it. Maybe is, I guess, with Montserrat as a member of the CPC, any request the CPC get to use the housing funds, CPC housing funds, CPA housing funds, to make sure it goes through the housing committee, or at least through Montserrat as member of the committee. Because and I think this may happen in the past and it could in the future, the Franklin Regional Housing Development Authority that manages the Smikes House for the town could ask for money to do some improvements there. They could go direct to CPC and ask for money, and I think they have done that in the past. And that's where it would be important for Montserrat to speak up and say, hey, that needs to come to the housing committee to see if we agree to that. Because
Yeah.
they're different than FERCog. We know that they would pay attention to the housing committee, but other agencies maybe not.
Yeah.
So I think that's could be a case where it's important that the housing committee be available to comment on that kind of a project.
Yeah.
That
Well, that
seems like-
hasn't come up yet, but I'll keep my ears open.
That's right.
Well,
So you're our eyes and ears, Montserrat, on the CPC.
and keyboard.
Yes, that's right. And fingers. So eyes, ears, and fingers. Like,
Right.
all right, that's awesome. So let's and I guess I'll just simply insert between 3 and 4. Say again, I think, thanks to all for your help on the we got that flyer on the housing modification loan program posted and distributed. We got it prominently on the town website. We got it mentioned on the Facebook page. It's at the senior center. It's at the library. So I think we've done a good job with that. And I'll just note, I got access since our last meeting to the housing email inbox. I had been using Housing Trust at Whately.org, but now there's a separate housing at Whately.org email address. So you'll see future. So then if people are sending inquiries to housing, now somebody's monitoring that inbox.
I would like to see in the future, a couple of months or whatever down the road, just to inquire at FERCog if anybody has responded to the request, or even in the county, if anybody in
Right.
Franklin County is using that loan program, and just for maybe information purposes, and if we have, if there's a big use of it in the county but not in Whately, maybe we could do something to encourage more use if needed. But
That's
follow
great.
up to see if it's effective or not. Because I don't imagine they're gonna publish, well, I don't know if they'll publish anything more in the paper or news articles or not, but
Right, it's going to go into the scoop as well, right?
Yes, it's in the scoop.
Oh, it is.
And I will also put in a little plug. Got yet more quality time with Montserrat. But if you ever have a chance to do the scoop folding at Joyce's house, it's good time was had by all, and it's a little other chance to catch up on some of the town gossip.
It's a very easy volunteer opportunity that only lasts for about an hour.
Yes,
when's the
absolutely.
next scoop coming out?
In 3 months.
No, is
No,
there one
no,
out right now?
yeah,
Yes, there's one in the works right now that will be coming in the mail momentarily.
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
probably within the next week or so it should. So yeah, so we got a piece. That article that I circulated to you all is there in the scoop.
Great.
And I'm hopeful, like I'm curious. I think all of us think that what could be wrong with building a largish multifamily housing development there at the DeMaio property, but I left the door open for people to send comments to the housing committee email address, one way or the other. So we'll see. We'll see. So this is a great segue to any updates. And I'll put out there, Jerry. Um, I'm this is my last year teaching, so I'm going to have more free time, and I do want to work, try to be more helpful and more active in supporting your work, or working with you, collaborating on housing. Haven't been able to do that much this year, but
Appreciate that.
so
No,
I'd love to hear what you've been able to do, if anything, since our last meeting related to DeMaio.
yeah, I've had a couple of conversations. First, I spoke, as I said, with Megan Rhodes up at FERCog about the development. Obviously, she put together the original plan, and she was,
HPP, yep.
yep, and she was quite pleased and receptive to the concept. I went through it with her. We talked about everything from the uniqueness of the water treatment plant to the type of real estate that we put there. I mentioned, it would really be nice to have a bus stop as well for the people with the property. She said she could definitely work in that direction to support us. She gave me the name of the head of the housing authority, a woman named Gina Giovanni, who I've reached out to, but have not yet connected. The reason I think it'd be important to have Gina is if you do wind up with affordable housing, working through the local preferences for that initial lease up, which could be Whately residents, followed by Whately town employees, followed by veterans, followed by disabled, whatever the case might be, you'd want to work that through with the housing authority. You can certainly cobble together as many local preferences as you want for the initial lease up, but those go away after turnover. So
Yes.
if 8 units of housing go in, there'll be a lottery of some sort. That'll have to be administered by somebody, and I don't know if, and they may be willing to do that at the Franklin Regional Housing Authority, but somebody has to administer that. Certainly,
Yeah.
when I was opening properties in Eastern Mass, you could get 100 applications for each available housing unit, depending on how it was defined relative to affordability. Workforce housing at 80%, or Section 8 housing at 30 to 50%.
Right.
And somebody would have to do that. That typically falls back on the developer to do that work. That wouldn't be anything that we'd be involved with.
Right.
Because I believe in the transaction, you'd be handing off the property, having pushed it on a path. But what I'm trying to do is clear as many obstacles as I can for conversations with the developer to say, hey, we've got the housing authority on our side to help structure this, and potentially they can handle the administration of the lease up, the qualifications of income and preference, and work through, create the waiting list for people to turn over, et cetera.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
it'll be interesting to see. There are other organizations. There's one, I don't know the acronym, but it's SEB, does a lot of the bigger lease ups where you have, 50, 60, 80, 100 affordable
Mhm.
units. They charge a fee. The housing authority might do the same. I don't know. But I need to connect with Gina. I do have a call into her and we'll talk through that.
Awesome.
She also
What was
mentioned
her name
Megan,
again, Jerry?
Gina Giovanni, Govani. She's the head of the housing authority.
Okay.
And so hopefully I'll connect with her this week. Megan also mentioned that there's a loosely related, and Fred, you may have been thinking of talking about this, something called Rural Development Inc.
Yes, I've heard some presentations by RDI. I think they've been
RDI.
involved
Yep.
with a big project in East Hampton.
Yep. She said she thought this project might be something that they'd be very interested in.
Ah, okay.
And they're somehow tied into the housing authority, but until I talk to Gina, I don't quite know it. But she said there may be other local developers that would have an interest in
Right.
in some of this. So just put that out there. The head of that RDI is currently out on maternity leave. But this project is going to take a while anyway, so I'm sure she'll be back before.
So do you have contact information for RDI or?
Not yet.
Okay.
Megan said the head is out on maternity leave.
Okay.
Perhaps Gina can steer me in that direction when I contact her. I
What
don't.
I'll do, I'll look. It seems to me like I heard a presentation within the last year through the Franklin Regional Planning Board, which I'm on, where RDI talked about. But yeah, I mean, they have a public website. So, but if you need some help, maybe ferreting out contact information or information, then let me know, Jerry, and I'll dig
Yeah.
what I
Yeah,
can
in
find out.
particular with the, I don't have the woman's name that's out on leave, but if you know of some people that have made that presentation, that could be helpful.
Yeah.
And I could certainly go that direction, but because they're somehow loosely related to FERCog and the housing authority, I don't know the roadmap yet. So I thought I'd just talk to the head of the housing authority first.
Okay. That makes sense.
Okay. So the other, so that's Megan. We're waiting for Gina. The other issue to work through is the Board of Health. And I spoke with a woman named Sydney Lewandowski, who is the inspector and primarily deals with septic. I went through the project with her to talk about the concepts. She asked that I forward information about the project and this treatment plant to her, along with Fran Fortino and a gentleman named Glenn Ayers, which I did. I heard back from Fran last week, and he seemed very supportive. I'll just read you quickly, quote, "Thanks for passing on the proposal for hopefully more affordable housing in Whately. We applaud the town for taking up this pressing housing need again." Then he went on to say there's some issues that we need to clarify. One, he pointed out the system that I identified is not currently on the Massachusetts list of approved alternative Title V innovative alternative technologies. I don't know what that means, other than it sounds like somebody in the bureaucracy somewhere said, oh, these people can play, but other people can't. And so he did give me a link to the Mass website. I'll reach out to a couple of those companies and see what their product is and how it might compare.
Megan
I'm also going to read.
Megan Rhodes might be a resource here too, because I remembered when we were working with her on the housing production plan, she was starting to talk about how Title V, as written, has been has created challenges to certain kinds of affordable housing and other kinds of multifamily housing.
Right.
And she mentioned that there were efforts being made to, create new kinds of carve outs for additional kind of treatment. And it just seemed to me she might also know, like, if there is such a list, how it's possible to get something onto that list if we wanted to.
Correct. I thought that's a great point, and I will reach back out to her. I'm also forwarding this synopsis from Fran to the Aquatech people to see what their thought is, because they
Yeah.
install these systems all over the country.
Right.
So I can't imagine that this is a self-imposed barrier of entry.
Yeah.
But it looks like the people are all from New England on the list.
Okay.
It just maybe they're not aware of it, and I'm not sure how you get on the good
Yeah.
list. So
Okay.
maybe we can help them play Santa Claus. I don't know.
Hmm.
He also pointed out that the system, if approved, would need a lifetime O&M contract, whoever owned the property to take care of it, which is very straightforward. You do that in any way, in any major building facility equipment,
Right.
like HVACs or boilers or air
Right.
handlers. You always do a preventative maintenance, so I don't think that's a big deal. I did ask him in my email response if he had any leads on that so I could get a sense of what the cost would be for somebody to go through and service the system. Most concerning, though, he said discharging wastewater into surface water like a stream is not allowed in Mass Title V, which mandates that sewage has to go underground and never go into water. You can't do that. If you might be able to get a groundwater discharge permit from Mass DEP, but according to his Google search, it's very hard to obtain.
Hmm.
So I thought about that for a little bit because the selling point of the wastewater treatment plant was to create clean enough water that could be disposed. And the person that I've worked with said what we really could do is submit a notice of intent to come under a general permit that he cited for mass law that allows direct discharge of treated domestic wastewater under 1 million gallons per day to any waterway in the state. So I sent that back to Fran with my thought of, I assume that's how the wastewater treatment facilities in Deerfield and Montague and everybody up and down the Connecticut River, they're putting their treated effluents directly into the waterways. And this is creating treated effluents, not raw sewage.
Yeah.
So then I had an email today from Sydney Lewandowski again saying, hey, we have a few questions we want to ask. Can we get together and have a Zoom meeting with you? And I said, sure, just let me know when and we'll be there.
All
So
right.
it seems like, Fran appropriately saying, hey, you got to be mindful of some things, but may not have been as clear on what the proposal was supposed to generate in terms of how it would efficiently operate, why it could discharge into that stream. So hopefully
Sure.
we can work through that in a Zoom meeting.
Okay.
So that's I think that's what I got.
That's great.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. The piece about the OEM contract just raised a question in my mind. Like, do you have a feeling? So maybe what I want to ask is for this particular treatment technology, like how bespoke is it? And how well established is this company? Like, is there a project risk of investing in something and then the company, disappears and there's nobody left to really maintain it?
Yeah, that's an interesting point. They do install all over the country. I could forward the website to the committee if you want to just dig into them
I
a little
would,
bit.
I'd like to maybe just, I suppose, maybe in a project like this, if we were really able to get over all the hurdles to this kind of novel treatment technology, as long as we might engineer in or have, a plan B, like if something failed and there
Yep.
was no, but anyway.
Yeah, and the one that they believe and have recommended to sell is their smallest model. They're used to doing 200 unit communities, houses.
Okay,
This is really tiny for them.
right.
I don't know how long they've been in business. Same would hold true of the other 4 or 5 people that are listed that Fran sent me on this allowable alternative technologies. I'm sure that that question has been part of the vetting process to get onto the nice list.
Mhm.
But you do make a good point that many technologies are outmoded 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road. How do you deal with that? With an
Yeah,
existing septic system, you have to dig it up and put another one back in.
yeah. But
So,
there's so many septic system, installers, maintainers, like
yeah,
that's effectively not a long-term concern. I mean, failure just means, yeah, you have to put in a new one. But
but I
if
would think that the towns like Montague, South Deerfield, I mean, they've been operating wastewater treatment plants for 80, 100 years,
yeah,
you know? So
you'd have to think if it wasn't such like there was this proprietary technology or something
right,
like that. But I'm not trying to poo-poo it. I think this is like a really interesting idea.
might
But
be.
if yeah, anyway, that's
It
great.
it works on the same concept of basically solidifying waste,
Right.
extracting nitrogen out of the water,
Mhm.
and then releasing clear, clean water to a certain level through screening, which has to be refreshed and updated, and
Mhm.
that you can then discharge. And that's no different than what without the aeration issue that the typical large municipal plants have. You could buy
Mhm.
the one by Montague on your bicycle and it'll take your breath away
Yeah.
if you're going up the hill.
Yeah, that's right.
And that's a problem when you have airborne, whatever you want to call it, that also that's because of particles in the air. And so it's
Right.
very important not to have people living near aerated plants,
Right.
um, which is why they're always stuck out in areas where you have fresh air to at least dilute it.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I'll
Other
keep you posted, and I'll send that website link, and then reach back out to Megan Rhodes. That's a
That
very good
sounds great.
suggestion.
And I was thinking, Megan. Well, I'm sure whether it's Megan or RDI. I mean, I think RDI is effectively a developer,
Right,
right?
correct.
Not a contractor. So, I mean, that's a great. I had forgotten about them, so I think that's a great lead. I'll see what I can dig out about that project. Other questions for Jerry about his updates tonight? That sounds great. I did forward to all of you the slides from the 40B training. Again, I think I that was a really helpful training, and it made me feel like, yeah, we're gonna probably pursue any project like this under the auspices of a friendly 40B.
Right.
The training was really about more like how to deal with a 40B project if a developer brings it to your town. They didn't, I asked a couple of questions around, well, what if we want to use 40B to get around zoning without having to rezone like the whole town to allow a particular project that would be generally not allowable per regular zoning. And yeah, it's doable, but there is this whole process. And it does seem to start with having a subsidizing agency, which might be the Franklin Housing Authority. You need to go friendly 40B, you need at least you have to start with getting this initial project letter. And what it seemed like the training made clear is you need a developer, you need a subsidizing agency for the affordable housing piece, and you need enough of a plan. You don't need a full detailed plan, but you need enough of a sketch of a plan for the subsidizing agency to give you this letter of support, which is like the first step in any kind of 40B project, friendly or unfriendly.
So is that relative to money when you say subsidizing agents?
Yeah, it is it has to do with not funding the development of the project, but it has to do with the subsidizing of the rents for the tenants. Because the idea is that the
Right,
developer,
right.
yep, you know that you understand where.
Yeah, so that's when you have Section 8 involved.
But I think even if you're dealing with below market rate, even 80% AMI involves some subsidy, is what I took away. And again, I'm not an expert about
It's a level, well, it's an opportunity to get financing from an agency like Mass Housing Finance Agency, MHFA,
yeah,
or
yeah,
to get a specific tax credit,
yeah,
that sort of thing. So to have interest in it, the housing authorities would only be able to say, yeah, we'll be willing to administer if we put in half a dozen Section 8 people, we've
yeah,
got a 3-year wait list, and we'd be happy to drop that in
yeah,
and support it. But the overall project, if this were all 80% AMI,
yeah.
theoretically, and it had a half a dozen Section 8s, the housing authority is really only going to be interested in those Section 8s.
Yes,
They're not
and
going to
that's,
care
thank
about
you.
they're not going to care about the workforce housing.
Yeah.
But the
So
developer,
this,
yeah,
yeah, I'm sorry that this is a good reminder that again, I'm still learning all of this from this training. You know, I got the training, but I didn't become an expert at the end of it. So what they did say is that in Massachusetts, there are just 4 subsidizing agencies. Mass Housing is one of them. They, rattled off,
the
this guy's
biggest.
great. And it's covered in the slides.
Yep, yep,
So these are the ones that are involved if there's going to be subsidized housing.
right.
So the housing authorities are doing the administration, but the subsidizing agencies are providing the the rent subsidies.
They provide some of the capital stack. There's no rent subsidy in 80% AMI. The
Okay.
developer says instead of charging 1,500, which is market rate, I'm going to
Yeah.
charge $1,200,
Yeah.
which is 80% AMI. I'm just making the numbers up. In
Yeah.
exchange for that, MHFA says, we will loan you, Mr. Developer, $15
Ah.
million at a
Okay.
preferred interest rate if you maintain that. But
Okay.
once they get um, their vote into it, is probably the best way for me to put it, then they become a very controlling agency relative to what are you going to build. For example, if it's market rate with a portion of 80% AMI, they want to make sure that the units are evenly distributed. You don't
Yeah.
take all the poor people and put them out by the dumpster.
Right.
You
Right.
want to make sure
Got
you
it.
have a specific level of, if you have ones and twos and threes in
Yeah.
studios, that you have a percentage distribution that's appropriate to the overall count. So they come with a
Yeah.
lot of rules and regulations when they turn over money. The
Okay.
housing authority is the only one that provides subsidy for apartments, and their subsidy is determined by the rent, the income level of the occupant. Some
Hmm.
occupants don't pay a nickel, in fact, get subsidized by the developer to cover their
Okay.
utility costs.
Yeah.
Some people you pay up to 30% of your income, and then the housing authority pays the difference to
Mm.
whatever the rent is.
Yeah.
That's
Wow.
how. And
So, again, maybe part of this, what I recall, is that orgs like RDI, like they've been around this rodeo many
correct,
times before, and
correct.
with the right parties and knowing that it wouldn't be, that it would be welcomed and supported by the community,
That's the key.
yeah, that I think could get people over the transom, and then we just have to figure out how big a project could go there that would be economically viable for a developer, but also tolerable to, the host community.
Right. And the developer potentially might say, okay, I'll put in the affordable housing, but I want the rest to be market rate.
Yeah,
And you want to get to 10, you have two. So if
yeah,
you get 8 and he puts in 32 units,
yeah,
he could be happy and
yeah,
willing to do that, depending on what those 8 are defined as. Are they going to be 80% workforce? Because there won't be anybody who potentially currently lives in the town or works in the town that's going to be eligible for Section 8 because they'd already be
Yeah,
on Section 8 and they'd
right.
be at a Section 8 project unless there's some rental housing in the town that accepts Section 8. I don't know.
Yeah.
So we'll have to, you can work your way through. Ideally, it would be an 80-20 project with a grouping of Section 8 inside of it. That would be
Yeah.
nice,
Yeah.
but
All
hard to
right.
say.
Well, it's progress. It's exciting.
Right. Megan did mention um, we may be getting closer to the concept of a request. It's not an RFP, request for a proposal, but more of a request for intent to put out to
Or an
develop
RFI. Yeah,
RFI.
request for information. Yeah.
Yeah, that would likely be the next step, but we'll cross that bridge as we get more detail.
Yeah. All right. All right. That sounds awesome. Okay.
So,
Um,
do we work with if we continue with this effort, say on the DeMaio property, do we work with housing development agency, or do we just put out an RFP to see what developer wants to build something there? What's our next step? Or if we know a developer, say from Jerry's contacts and whatever, if he knows of a developer that's interested, can we just deal with that one developer?
I don't know because it's town-owned land what
yeah.
that means. You probably I can't speak to that. Um, Oftentimes, when a project is available to a developer, they have a contact, they sit, they meet, and they do the deal. But if
Yeah.
it's town-owned land, I don't know how you dispose of it. I don't know the regulations inside of it.
And I think it would end up having to be an open process with like an RFI and an RFP. Just like Fred, they tried to do with the center school, right?
Right, right.
And and the center school is kind of hamstrung because it's very small. You're not going to build a large development there, and God knows how that's going to end up working out.
Right. So if a developer came to the town and said, I'm interested in DeMaio property, can we deal with them, or do we have to go
I
advertising?
don't know, and I don't necessarily. I know we're going to have to start asking that question and getting informed, but I think right now we're just trying to figure out what could be done there and would like I get the feeling like what we're trying to do through this initial research, looking at ways of not having to do a traditional septic system, um, to inform ourselves, to be able to have some informal conversations with some potential developers to see if anybody would be interested. The other route, of course, is just to, well, I'll say this. There's no point in putting out an RFI unless you even have an idea of what you're asking for. So just getting ourselves educated about what might be doable would help us craft a much clearer, more effective RFI. We went through this twice in the town for the center school. They put out an RFI, they got no responses.
That's right.
That's a waste of time.
Yeah.
I think we're just trying to be able to say, hey, you could put in a traditional septic system, but here's an alternate. You could put in affordable housing. Here's what we've thought about through with the housing authority on local preferences and the type of apartment mix we'd like to have within the grouping. Here's what we're thinking about relative to the feel of the site and what we'd like it to see, so it somehow complements Whately, and sort of provide a general framework and say, is anybody interested? Because some developer looking at that site would say, well, I can't do anything here because it's all septic. That's ridiculous. I'm not going to throw money at it, not knowing there may be an alternative and not knowing that the town might have some willingness to trade its ownership of the real estate for the opportunity to build something on there that will actually produce property taxes and create a more habitable environment for some people.
Can I ask a question?
Please.
What's an RFI and who is it put out to?
So I can answer that. So an RFI is a request for information, as opposed to an RFP, which is a request for proposals. So normally, a government agency, when they are not yet ready to put out a call for proposals, they don't know what they really want the proposals to do, and they're just trying to gather information, and they want to do it in an open and transparent way. They put out what's called an RFI. And they say, this is where, this is no obligation. We're looking for, experts or, developers to sort of say how you might do this or that. It's like asking questions where there is no commitment made by the government agency to do anything in response. Usually, however, the respondents see this appropriately as an opportunity to make themselves known to the government agency, or town government in this case, to put certain ideas into the minds of the government. Like I would, if I were a potential bidder, I would respond to an RFI saying, well, here's some good ways of doing this or doing that would perhaps give me an advantage if I were to eventually bid on an RFP. Follow me?
Yes.
So even though you don't get anything, there's no quid pro quo in responding to an RFI, there's still benefits if you have something to offer to responding to an RFI. You don't and it's bad if you put out an RFI and nobody responds. That could be poor marketing. It could be you asked incoherent questions, or so if we're going to do
And
an
you don't,
RFI.
and you just make it public. You don't direct the the RFI to anyone in particular.
Well, no. Wise government orgs do networking, right? They put the
Right.
RFI out, but they they beat the bushes and they try to make sure that potential respondents get it on their radar.
Yeah, they know about it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
You want to, the goal is success. So you write an RFI that you hope certain organizations you already know about are going to respond, and you're looking to see if anyone else that you don't know might pop up on the radar. Next time I'm in town offices and I can grab Pete's ear, I'll just bounce some of this off of him to get a sense from him what he thinks our next steps are. And even, Jerry, next time you chat with Megan, just running this sort of sketch by her, like, it seems like we want to gather some ideas and then aim for an RFI, but not put out an RFI until we've at least made some contact with some potential developers and some potential respondents. Like if an RDI were to tell us, oh, that, nothing will ever be able to be done there for this reason or that reason. And that would be good to know.
Right.
Fred has, there's always the fallback that we, as Fred suggested, which is basically just sell the land.
Yeah.
Sell the land, capture the funds, and use that, put that in the trust for a housing project somewhere else.
Right. But then you don't know what it could be a Burger King. So
Yes, right. Or,
Dollar
a
General.
bank. Yeah.
Could
Or more likely cannabis.
yeah,
yes. Which is
You
all
haven't
going to
reached
implode.
saturation yet?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's all going to implode, I'm telling you. Poor
Yeah.
poor Northampton, I really feel.
You mean it's going to go up in smoke, I think is what you're saying.
Can I
Fred?
just say something? I don't know if anybody on this committee or really that many people in town know that there is a developer that did develop a housing project on State Road. Not too far from DeMille property. There is south of Christian Lane, the first house on the left, not the one set back, but the one next to the second one there. is owned by I would call it developer that bought the lot. It was for sale, oh, 5, 10 years ago, very reasonable price, and developed the property into a 5-bedroom unit for disabled, handicapped, whatever, challenged individuals. I don't think they pay taxes because they're federally exempt or something. It's an organization out of the state. I think
Huh.
it may be Connecticut. I have to look at the address on the assessor's webpage where we send a
Okay.
tax. Well, we send tax bill, but I think they're tax exempt. Uh, it's a 5-bedroom, 5-unit house that's, somebody like that may be interested in this property at especially at a very reasonable price, because that was their, I think, incentive for buying it there. If we want to deal with that, we may not get any tax dollars out of it if they're a federally exempt or whatever agency that doesn't have to pay taxes. Uh,
That's an interesting idea. I think we're coming up with various visions of what could be on this 4-acre parcel,
right.
and ranging from a fairly, something in the 30-ish unit size, with a mixture of market rate and others, or just a small, a very small thing that has just a handful of units if somebody wanted to do that. I mean, we make more progress towards that 10% goal, uh, if we could get a large multifamily built there on that 4-acre parcel.
And you'd get revenue.
Yeah, we get revenue, but
But
yeah, I
then,
think there's no reason to take anything off the table just yet.
but it's gonna for a larger development. It's gonna take. I'll just refer to Sanderson Place in Sunderland. I mean, how many years did it take to get their
It's true.
project going, and all the involvement from the town and committees and organizations and all that, and somebody spearheading all of that effort, and it just seems to be a monumental task to develop that versus some guy down the road that wants put in 6 or 8 units, and it's done in 2 years.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah,
I mean,
but
and we are,
in
yeah,
the same vein to that, Sanderson Place, my understanding, that's a much bigger project.
yeah.
And I understand there was a lot of capital finance structure had to be involved. But I came from a company where we would develop 150 unit mill buildings, and you'd buy the property, you'd line up your financing and start construction, and 2 or 3 years later, people would be moving in. And
Mm.
all those mill buildings in Eastern Mass, up and down the Lawrence River,
Mm-hmm.
have been converted into residential real estate. And they laid fallow for years, and it brought great tax benefit to the towns, created
Mm.
employment for people in the town, and created great spaces for people to live. And so
Mm.
if you have a developer that knows how to manage with large scale construction companies like in Boston, the Fish Company is one of them. There are a number of them that are used to building big buildings, skyscrapers, but also companies that specialize in historic renovation. So I think we can find, if you find the right developer, you can figure that out and not have to think it's going to be 10 years before we get this. But you have to also think long term for the town. What do you want? Do you want to wait 5 years and the building's built and now you have a tax base and you've achieved your housing goals? Or do you want to just sell it off or give it to somebody that's going to put in 4 or 5 units that may not be subsidized housing at all, that provides no revenue?
Mm.
And it's not really an affordability need that's being met. It's just a preference need that's being met. So I think there are lots of ways to spin it.
And I like being ambitious, but Fred has a point. Like,
He
I'd
does.
like this to happen within my lifetime.
Right.
The other thing that concerns me about developing anything here, and other people in town are really skeptical, is to deal with a contractor, not a developer, a contractor, which is what's happening with the Blue School. the contractor developing 10 units and a possibility of another 10. So there could be 20 units on that parcel, and it's taken years, 4 or 5 years to get to where it is today, and it's still not available. I don't know,
That's different. I agree.
Yeah,
is that, I guess we should try to avoid that kind of scenario if at all possible, and
Correct.
especially if you want town people to support using CPC money they want to see something done, not taking 5 or 6 or 10 years to develop, I
Yeah,
guess.
that's an excellent point. Every time I drive by that project, I just shake my head. I've never
yeah.
seen a building develop so slow.
I know,
I'm
Yeah.
just
I
not
know,
used to that.
I know,
My
I
dog
know.
agrees. Piper agrees.
I'll
Yeah.
tell you that
Let-
JD Ross knows Bill Aubert or Bob Aubert, who's
Yeah.
been involved in that. It seems to have some understanding of how some things at the state level have gotten in the way, but I don't really know what the truth is. One other thing that maybe I'll put this in the minutes, Montserrat, as an action for me, just so I don't feel like I'm, Jerry's doing all the work. But I was reminded that, there was this nice redevelopment of the school building just in downtown Hatfield. And it seems like maybe I can contact people in that town of Hatfield government, like the town administrator, and just find out what developers were involved in those projects, because they are multifamily. I think there's affordable housing in there. So maybe just checking in with the neighbors. So I'm going to take that action to just see what I can find out about
Yeah, that'd be great.
development in Hatfield.
Yeah, and when we can really get some certainty around the opportunity, I'll reach out to the guys at the wind companies and see if they have local contacts. The project's probably much too small for them to want to do, but you never know. But I want to make sure we have something that's viable before I start asking them to come out here and look at that stuff.
Okay. So I think we've run our course for tonight at 7:04 p.m. There's really not anything else that I really wanted to take up tonight unless somebody else did. So what I would propose we do is identify our next meeting dates. We didn't really do the housing trust meeting date, but so I think per the calendar, the next date for housing committee would be Monday, the 12th of January. I think I may not be able to make that meeting because I'll be returning from Baltimore. And
Can
it
we make it the
is
following Monday?
the 19th. I mean, that happens to be Martin Luther King Day.
Probably should avoid that day.
Probably should avoid that day.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess one question is, do we want to skip January and just go to, ooh, that's,
How about the 13th then?
let's actually, maybe what we should do is see if we can find a date in January. Like if we could move it to Tuesday, the 13th, could that work?
I'm going to run and get my calendar. I'll be right back.
Okay, do that. Because it actually looks like I'm going to be, and even February is going to be tricky for me.
And I know I'm on the finance committee and they're going to start all their budgets. And I believe we're meeting on Tuesdays, but let me just go get their schedule.
Okay. Yeah, have a check. I mean, really, I could do the 14th as well. Like my whole life
Right.
is opened up starting in 2026. Fred Orlowski, what is your schedule like during the week of January 12th?
Yeah, I don't have anything right now.
Okay,
Maybe the conflict on the 15th, but other than that, 12, 13, or 14 is fine with me.
okay, so you could potentially do the 14th.
That would be fine for me too.
14th?
Yep.
That's Wednesday. Jerry, how does Wednesday, the January 14th sit with you?
It is actually okay. The first FinCom meeting is on the 20th, so
Okay, all right. So let's move, which we will agree that the next housing committee meeting will be off our regular schedule, but it'll be on Wednesday, January 14th at 6.
Okay,
And 1, 2, 3. And then it looks like, just for, even though the housing trust is gavelled out, I think that March, January, February, March would be, so the next trust meeting would be on Tuesday, March 9th. So, and we'll do it in the same, we'll put that in for now. I'll just say Housing Trust meets also at 6 p.m. All right.
Could you tell me again what that date is for the Housing Trust?
So Monday, March 9th would be the quarterly meeting of the Housing Trust. And of course, the Housing Committee meets at on that same date and
Yeah.
roughly the same time.
so March 9th.
March 9th would be the next Housing Trust meeting, but we agreed that the next Housing Committee meeting would be on
The 14th.
Wednesday, the 14th.
What about February?
And February, if we want to schedule that, because I'm going to be in Canada during the week of the 9th. So I wouldn't be able to meet until the 17th or 18th of February, Tuesday or Wednesday. And if finance is doing meetings on Tuesdays,
Yep.
then maybe we want to shift.
Yeah, that week they moved their meeting that was scheduled on the 18th to the 25th, so that people could be on their schedules. So
Okay.
18th
So
is
you
fine.
could do the February 18th.
I could do that, but I have Conservation Commission at 7, so I would really need to end at 6:59.
Okay. And just out of curiosity, how does Tuesday the 17th look?
That's fine for me.
Because the 16th is also President's Day, another holiday. But so the 17th, trying to get it closer to a Monday, but so would 17th of February be good for most?
yes, fine.
Yeah.
Because we don't know about Fred Barron. So we'll have to, I'll get those dates out to him and get his feedback. So we'll tentatively put a hold on 6 p.m. on Tuesday, the 17th for Housing Committee.
Great. All right.
Okay,
Okay, awesome. Very good. Well, thank you all. So then what I think we need to hear is a motion to adjourn.
Oh, I move that we adjourn.
second,
Okay. Motion has been made and seconded. Roll call vote. Fred,
yes.
Montserrat,
Yes.
Jerry.
Yes,
Is that your final answer, Jerry?
it is my final.
All right, and then
I'm
I'm
hungry.
yes. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you all. I'm stopping the recording. Have a great night, and we'll talk again at an appropriate moment in the future. Good night,
Great.
all.